Hello everyone, my name is The Controlled Burner, and today we're going to look at what I thought were the top 5 best and top 5 worst singles of this month. A few things I want to mention before I start is that number 1, these only include released singles, not just any deep cuts from an album. While there have been some great and terrible deep cuts that have come out this month, I feel like the singles at least help narrow down the decisions, and these are supposed to be representative of the artist's new work, so they hold a little more importance for me. Number 2, I've not listened to everything that's dropped. I do have a certain limited amount of time to listen to new music for my work schedule right now, so I'm just not going to be able to touch every base. If you do have any suggestions or things you think I'm missing out on, I genuinely love to hear them. And finally, number 3, these are only my opinions. This video wasn't made to criticize people for liking stuff I don't or disliking stuff I do. This is just a small vid to kind of let myself talk about the stuff I like or dislike. It's all fun and games, right? Oh well, ready or not, here they come. Let's start with the best singles. Like it goes, I fed the scene. Loathe have been an interesting band to watch as their exposure to the music world seems to get larger, especially after their 2020 album I Let It In and It Took Everything. There really seemed to be a lot of hype for them with their mixture of the hard elements of alt metal with the more smooth parts of shoegaze that definitely gave off the vibe of other great metalcore bands like Deftones. Now granted, I didn't really know what to think of any of their newest material since they hadn't dropped any official music since their last album in 2021, but it seems like we're finally getting an album soon with some new singles across the last year, including their latest one as of recording this, Fangs. And if this is anything to go by, it seems like we're getting more of that blend of sounds, albeit with some new sounds added in the mix too. This is definitely a Loathe song for sure, where it trades between these really laid back sections of the synths, breezy electric guitars, and vocals, and then suddenly hits you with the most hardcore badass riffs right afterwards to wake you up again. As always, they work these sounds really well together and actually manage to transition between the two very well without making it seem clunky or like they're two separate songs. But we also get some more interesting additions on here, like some funky bass across the second verse that gives this almost a bit of an R&B sound to it. The song even has a fake out ending where it goes silent and then just hits you with these really lovely synth patterns that almost make it like some ambient track off the new Boards of Canada album. They are small changes, it's not like a full makeover for them, but they do give the song some extra flair to it that makes it sound different compared to their previous work. And as always, I respect the emotional aspect displayed through the two singers' crooning vocals and the lyrics, which display a pretty sharp image of this guy going through a midlife crisis and basically wondering if everything he's done up until this point in his life has been worth it. So yeah, all is looking like the new Loathe album can bring forth some more soothing sounds and gut punches at the same time. And that is something I guess I'm looking forward to.
Drop the needle, turn up the volume. Record spinning, this show hypnotic. Music make you feel just like cotton. Pick me up when I feel like falling down.
One thing I can say about getting into hip-hop is that there really are a handful of artists who not only make good stuff, but you can always rely on them to continue making good stuff in the future. People like Denzel Curry, Jid, Danny Brown, and certainly a lot of other rappers who just have a very strong track record when it comes to releasing projects that show off their talents in the best way possible. And Vince Staples absolutely deserves to be in this group. His career now spans for at least a full decade now, and he's made a handful of great songs across his career while also diversifying the sounds he experiments with. Whether it's the hardcore hip-hop of North North or the more laid-back and introspective Black and Blue, Staples has proven for quite a while that the dude has range and continues to uphold the quality of his music for a while. And on his newest record, Crybaby, we saw him really change up once again with the focus of rock-influenced sounds as well as some pointedly lyrics going after the current political state of the world. And if you needed a prime example of when this worked best, look no further than his third single off the album, Cotton. This track really leans heavily into this more funk rock kind of sound with the 4-to-the-floor drum beat and the plucky bass guitars that later include the light piano section and these fuzzy guitar notes in the verses and bridge that really bring more swing to the track. Except whereas this sounds like on paper to be a fun dance track to move with it, it actually is all in the minor key and instead gives this feeling of dread and depression that's hidden more in the track, and that very much reflects what the song is going for here. The lyrics on the surface all seem to be about trying to stay optimistic in the bad times, and even though he's lived a hard life, he's always got the music to pick him up when he feels like falling, and how he wants the people to dance along with his song. Except when you look deeper in the imagery here, you realize it's more so talking about how even after getting out of his rough environment, he's now in a new one that demands him to be a cash cow for these large record labels, or dare I say, to be a slave. Hence why he compares music picking him up to picking up cotton, or how the dance for me part can easily be interpreted as those labels telling Staples what to do with the music he makes. And top that off with his very low-key and defeated vocal delivery on this track, I can say that this turned out to be a great song that really captured the grim reality that a guy like Vince Staples has to go through. In a weird way, this song is unfortunately too good at what it does. So it's kind of an open secret on my channel that I tend to use the website Album of the Year quite a lot when it comes to music. It's by no means a perfect website, especially when you get to see how so many reviews can feel like one-liners that barely portray anything about what they're thinking about the music. But I do have to give it props for having a pretty organized system in finding the latest albums and singles that seem to be gaining popularity across each week. And when you're looking through these new releases, you tend to find that there are also a lot of users on the site who submit their own music for ratings, most likely as a means to spread the word and to maybe take any of the praise or good faith criticism to learn for their future releases. Now, I don't often go out of my way to look at them. It's been a bad habit just not to check out those really small artists, as well as just feeling the pressure to come up with specific notes on some music that I know will be read by said artist, but I do sometimes look at it if there's been some buzz behind it to see if I can get the hype. And with this song by AOTY user Taunter, I can say that I am thoroughly impressed with what I've heard. Here we see Taunter going for this huge folktronica sound that actually builds up as the track goes on. It starts off with these nice shimmering piano notes and acoustic guitars before these glitchy drums are added on top of the track, giving it this kind of eerie feel to everything. Only for near the 3-minute mark to really kick things off with this really melodic synth pattern and more live sounding drums across the track that really give the previous section building up to a satisfying payoff. It's such a really atmospheric instrumental and even kind of reminds me of what I like best about artists like Quedeca. Taunter's vocals are also a big factor in what makes this work. They're really emotive and fit the vibe of the whole track well. As well also kind of reminds me of the vocalist to Tears for Fears, which is a huge plus. It just all combines as something really huge and emotional, which would be impressive for any artist, but really feels special to see someone with only 2 songs on their Bandcamp and with very little recognition. I really hope for the best for Taunter if they're able to continue making music like this, and I'm looking forward to that EP. And no, I was not paid to say that. Sometimes real recognizes real.
Lamping in the Hamptons, looking for estates, not a mansion. Scanning for the acreage in the pamphlet. I think this the big one, Sanford.
Well, speaking of hip-hop artists you can always rely on for some quality music, I really don't think Tyler needs an introduction at this point, given just how successful critically and commercially he's been throughout his career, and especially during the 2020s. And I definitely agree with a lot of it. He's really been consistently making some of the best rap albums each year that proves his skills as a rapper, producer, singer, and a very provocative figure who can either make some very introspective songs in his life, or just can go all out in the fun he's having. Now, this was technically released in December of last year, but that was only just the music video, whereas he now only released it as an official single on streaming services this year alongside another song, That Guy. And it would feel like a crime to not mention this song at all, because this is another banger for Tyler. Instrumentally, it's the most classic example of that neo-soul rap beat with a prominent sample of an 80s R&B track that heavily utilizes these soft piano notes, some funky electric guitars, these ambient synthesizer notes in the background, and these very light drum brushes. It all sounds smooth as butter and absolutely fits Tyler's focused rapping delivery and also the more lighthearted singing for the chorus of this song. Lyrically, it's nothing more than a pretty braggadocious song about a vacation trip Tyler took to the titular Sag Harbor, New York, but man does he do it with so much cool wordplay. Lines like, "Them boys ain't got no rhythm," "Up-tempo got him aggy," "She sponging up my plankton, it got her moving crabby," or "I want them to see me like the bottom of a boat, bro. Buddy bad mouth me so we clean him with the scope, bro. We don't brush it off, we keep a stick to chew and blow, bro. You need a big jaw to talk these numbers. It's just filled with so much awesome imagery and metaphors that it's hard not to be impressed with it. He even takes time in between the bragging to call out cultural appropriation, which he shockingly makes sound smooth. So yeah, unsurprisingly, another great track from Tyler, and while I don't think this is being attached to any project in the future, it is still a friendly reminder to everyone that he is, indeed, that guy.
The heart takes what it wants. I'm not scared to bleed. You know I just do it.
It's kinda crazy to see Steve Lacy's career trajectory and all the choices he's made from it. He starts off as a more underground bedroom pop artist, gaining a bit of a fan base along the way, until he suddenly finds a major breakthrough with his song Bad Habit that suddenly pulls him into mainstream, for better and worse, especially when it came to performing that music live and realizing most people just wanted to hear the chorus and leave.
The way nobody sang the next verse embarrassing as.
And then, once he finally achieves this newfound recognition, he basically dips and doesn't release music for the next 3 years. It's a thing where I'm not sure if this was him no longer wanting to be associated with the mainstream, or if maybe he was just taking his time with this new material, like what an artist like Chappell Roan mentioned. But I guess it surprised me with how long that break space was, and even then only for one single in 2025, and then finally 2 more in June this year, followed by the announcement of a new album. But oh well, at the end of the day, whether or not Lacy would still be successful in the mainstream wasn't as important as the real question of did he come back with something good to match the legit quality he's shown he can do across his previous albums. And after listening to The Feeling and giving it a fair shake, yeah, my goat still has it. In fact, he still had it so much that he technically could have gotten the top 2 spots on this list, because I also really enjoyed his Is It Cool single with SZA, but I figured it was only right to restrict an artist to just 1 entry for this month. I do think The Feeling is the better of the 2 by quite a lot though, starting with this really lush instrumental that sees him leaning more into his neo-soul sound with these really pretty synths, some very bubbly and bouncy bass guitars, and a pretty solid drum beat over these very soothing background vocals. That alone was already a really solid start for the track, but it's truly Lacy himself that elevates this into a whole other level. His singing throughout this track is absolutely amazing. I've always been a fan of his low-key, raw crooning that fits with this laid-back production, and also gives off the sense of longing and despair, and it works great here too. But there's also a lot of moments where he gets into his higher register right after the chorus, and especially the layered vocals around the end of the track that really adds to that soothing part of the instrumental. And the lyrical content definitely fits into what I mentioned about the longing feeling, given it's a full track basically about catching feelings over a relationship that he's unsure is still happening with this other person and is absolutely desperate to find any answers for. I like how blunt he is about the pain of how this relationship feels like a dream now, and going over all the ways he's tried to cope with it, like writing songs to distract himself, only to then write songs about said partner. It all feels similar to Bad Habit in that way, but in a far more moodier vibe that at least shows he does want to patch things up in the end. So I guess I can say the wait was definitely worth it if Steve Lacy is still dropping bangers like this. I definitely get the feeling that it's biscuits, it's gravy, after all. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed those songs, because now it's time for the worst singles.
This not for the radio. Who this for? This not for the radio. Say, this not for the radio. What it do?
Oh boy, I know I'm not gonna make some fans with this choice. Look, I'll admit that I'm not really a big Future fan to begin with. I always just found his music pretty generic in the trap music field, with very typical production, vocal delivery, and lyrics for that style. And unlike artists like Playboi Carti or Young Thug, who I also wouldn't say I'm a fan of, but could at least identify what makes them stand out in the rap field, Future just never seemed like he stuck out as much as his fans would say. Outside of a few songs like Mask Off and some of his features, I rarely found his music to work as either some smooth, moody vibe to play in the background or some huge banger to go off of. So I truly went into the single with virtually zero expectations. But, to my surprise, no, I'm just messing with you. This also sucks. Another run-of-the-mill trap instrumental where the most it has going for it is a vocal sample that comes in through the track that's basically buried over the synths, the 808s, and the trap beat. It doesn't even sound that good mixed with everything, and even the prettier synths that come in at the end can't really do much as it basically just builds up to the same beat again. Vocally, Future once again is doing his low-key, auto-tuned voice that makes him sound disinterested and bored, and lyrically, it's just more bragging about his wealth, all the women he attracts, and people copying his style, with maybe a little bit about the stress that comes with the fame, but doesn't have any interesting wordplay or even attitude to make it interesting. This was such a nothing burger of a song. I would honestly be more inclined to just leave a song like this out of the list if its only crime was being boring. But honestly, the big reason why it did make the list is purely off the chorus, and the main sentiment of the song is how this isn't for the radio. I know it's a brag about how he's just an out there artist and he's too cool to care about what the mainstream says, but like, this is the song you think ain't for the radio? This is one of the most safe, cookie cutter, white bread rap songs I've heard this year. If anything, this sounds designed for the radio. And the thing is, I could honestly see how some of Future's songs could be branded as not safe for the radio, given he's known for toxic behavior. This is the same guy who once bragged that if his girl caught him cheating, he wouldn't even say sorry, but he doesn't even really do that in the song. He mostly tries to play cool with the mentions of the women and doesn't say anything out of pocket at all. So yeah, I still can't say I'm convinced with Future's music if he's just gonna follow his usual formula. If only this wasn't for the radio, otherwise I wouldn't have to dread hearing it on repeat.
It's not for the radio.
Bon bon check. Dice bon 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 oh check. Dice bon bon check. Bon 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 oh check.
Travis Scott has recently been making a bad habit of some very questionable choices across his career. There was his weird beef with Pusha T, which I know Push technically started, but did stem from events showing Mr. Scott to being kind of a dick, taking studio time from him. There was then also the drop of his rap group's album, Jack Boys 2, which many held to be one of his worst projects in a while, with a lot of lackluster and ridiculous songs. And then there's his feature game, where he seems to always give less than half of the energy he brings on his own material. It's a shame, because Travis has truly been one of the most interesting and enjoyable trap artists of the last decade, with a lot of great bangers that also try to push forward in different styles with his production, but it has been a little bit of a hit or miss as of late. So now we have him collaborating with this small dembo artist, J1. He seems to be getting more buzz with his own music and working with larger Spanish artists like Raul Alejandro, and it's cool to see Travis working with a smaller artist this time around with a different sound that he normally isn't in. And that's also where my compliments for this song stop, because yeesh, this is not good. I admit I'm not really a fan of the dembo sound to begin with. It just feels like it's trying to be loud and annoying with having only one very simple and repetitive rhythm to just let it ride the entire song. And that's kind of what we get on this song. Just some really choppy and cheap sounding drum hits with the occasional 808s thrown in there too. I admit it's not as blown out as other dembo songs have done, but on the other hand, that also means this beat has nothing going for it besides being slightly monotonous and extremely boring. Neither one or Scott really sounds interesting or energetic on the song, although honestly, I guess one sounds like he's trying a little bit compared to Travis's half-asleep delivery he normally gives for these features. And lyrically, once again, this is extremely bare bones. J1's verse essentially talks about a hot girl who's all up on him, you know, as long as he's willing to spend $2,000 on her. Guess personality alone won't cut it. And as for Travis's verse, I don't really know. It seems like flexing, but it's just so vague. It's really hard to see what he's bragging about. It's also hard to know when both of them basically fill each line with boom boom or ochet. Seriously, the word boom is said at least 100 times throughout the whole song, and the song is less than 2.5 minutes, which is how we get some masterpiece lines here, like with Travis saying boom 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 boom, whoa 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 whoa. Genius work there, Travis. So yeah, I really can't say I look forward to hearing anything else from this J1 artist, and it certainly has me worried about what the future is looking for Travis's new music, because this really is a boom boom in a different way.
OG, destrúyelo, Batman. Oh shit, we got one.
Everyone falling from the roof. Mama made me cry, break your skin, cracking through. Now it's funny that you never understand that you can
You ever just see an artist name that you swore you've never seen before, and then do a little digging and realize it's an artist you're familiar with? And then it just makes you all the more worried? I know that's a little specific, but that's exactly what happened when I came across this Chandal artist. Someone who I found through the AOTY singles page and was curious to see what the hype was for this person. Only to find out it's actually an alias or the newest name to the artist Boy with Uke. For those who don't know, he was a bedroom pop artist who started getting some buzz on TikTok early in his career and gave us albums like Serotonin Dreams, which I genuinely think may be a contender for one of the worst albums I've heard this decade. That album was filled with some disgustingly cheap and clean alt-pop production, some truly obnoxious ukulele playing alongside his very rough vocals, and lyrics that managed to balance being annoyingly cutesy and also really unlikable at the same time. Needless to say, this did not get me excited to check the song out, but I still did want to give him a chance since this album was 4 years ago and it seems a lot has changed with Boy With You, I guess including this new name now too. So after keeping an open mind and listening to the new single 2002, I guess I can say it's different in the way that it sucks. It really is a different approach, in fairness, that sees Channel going for this more industrial hip-hop sound with these chaotic synths, large 808s, and these clanky drums all throughout. I can give him props for going outside his comfort zone, but I still have to acknowledge that this feels like I'm hearing a Yeezus light beat, with the synths and the drum beats gets a little annoying and don't go as hard as they really should. That's not even getting into the second half of the track, where not only is the drum beat essentially just someone knocking on the door, but then suddenly it turns into a breakbeat instrumental out of nowhere with these more lighter synths and even a random guitar loop across it. I don't really get the point of that. Neither do I get why Channel thought it was a good idea to try to imitate the SoundCloud rap formula with his scream rap delivery during the verses, the monotone voice throughout the chorus, and then the auto-tune vocals across that make him sound like a malfunctioning robot. I do want to give him some credit lyrically, since it seems like he's trying to touch on his rough childhood, especially towards his abusive father who never really was there for him, but I do think it gets a little muddled with some of his tough talk about having his father go to prison and then shooting him up, and also when he then uses that as a way to say that you would never understand his pain because you're not the same as him, and you're just a silver spoon bitch. It seems oddly dismissive of other people who would see similarities in the experience that he's describing here, even if it's supposed to be addressed to his haters. Look, I will say I do respect him for trying to shed that Boy With Uke sound into something more interesting and unique. I'll give him that, but I do think he still has a lot of work to do to make those sounds actually be good and not just be trying new things to just sound different. I'm just hoping he can be a little more than just boy with potential, you know?
2002.
It's like volume 2, breakfast to dinner. Algorithm bulletproof, but breaking your finger. Thank you for the comments, it's because of where you hate.
In my previous month's best and worst singles list, which sadly never got published since I was too busy at the time, I did write how K-pop had an interesting year so far and that there really were some great songs across the genre that were catchy and fun. Usually found in the less popular groups and artists, ones that you actually had to research for. But if you relied solely on what the mainstream scene had been giving us with K-pop, it really hasn't been good. Like really, BTS dropped a very underwhelming project where it felt like nobody wanted to collaborate again. Blackpink similarly had an EP that a lot of people didn't like. Meanwhile, newer acts like KATSEYE and LE SSERAFIM had similarly drawn critique for their new music, which includes me. Songs like Internet Girl and Boompala both truly are strong contenders for the worst singles released this year, with a very similar issue of being both extremely annoying and also really cookie cutter for the genre. So naturally, it only made sense to get these two groups to collaborate alongside one of the few K-pop acts who seem to be getting away unscathed, Illit, and have this huge posse collab as a way to build up enough hype for all the stands to enjoy. I guess I was curious to see if having these groups all together would maybe spark some magic from these past releases, and nope, we're still getting slop, and arguably for the same reasons I dislike their previous songs. Instrumentally, we have another song where it sounds like it's relying on being loud and all over the place to sound like a club banger, but Instead of sounds bare bone and how awful it sounds with the overblown 808s and bass mixed with some weird glitchy synths in the background and a messy drum beat, the chorus ends up adding more screeching synth patterns and this annoying vocal glitch effect that sounds even worse. It's like it's trying to make some sort of apocalyptic vibe to the track, but they unfortunately achieved it too well, so it sounds like hell. Meanwhile, the vocalists here really don't add anything special. Their lighter vocal melodies really don't sound right over this large, bombastic beat, and their attempts to do a rap flow in the chorus is just so phony. I can respect that they did make an effort to give all of the girls some time to sing, but there's only so much that can do when the most that makes them stand out is some slightly weird enunciations, like Kazua's way of saying heart, harder. And speaking of the lyrics, this might truly be the messiest part of the song. It seems to be another calling out the haters anthem where they go after people who seem to never stop talking about them, and because of all their hate, they've become so big that they're now iconic by mistake. Even if we ignore how little sense that sentiment makes, or how it almost seems like a self-roast, so many of these lyrics for this just have the most eye-rolling bit of wordplay to use for this. I already mentioned the harder line, but there's also gems like hating me is all you do, breakfast at dinner, algorithm bulletproof, breaking your fingers, or your imagination got me going viral, 24/7, more like 25/8, honestly, are you okay? Probably not, actually. And then to have a line where they say they do this for the dream, not just for a bag. Yeah, I don't think their label decided to just group all of the most trendy K-pop groups together for artistic value. So yeah, this song is just a mess, and further proof to stay away from what the mainstream is promoting for new K-pop music, because the only thing this song did right was acknowledging that this is a mistake. When it comes to the songs that truly end up being the worst for me, the ones that make it to the top of these lists, it really just comes down to how much the song confuses me. And I don't mean it just confuses me on why it sounds bad or why anyone would like it. I mean confused as to why it exists. Why would the artist genuinely want to spend time crafting the song, let alone for it to sound like what it does? I know that sounds harsh, but I do think the purpose behind a song does at least give some ground to work with it when making music. And mind you, sometimes that purpose can be as simple as to make a banger or something that just sounds chill, and that's perfectly fine. And even with the bad songs I've previously mentioned, I'd argue all of them had a purpose in what they were trying to do. They just didn't really work out well in the execution. I truly think it's very rare for me to be outright confused about a song's existence, but this Alan Walker and Ava Max song has truly shown itself to be that rare example, because this song is just baffling. I don't even really know where to start with this. I guess we can tackle the most glaring problem with the song in the instrumental. But yes, if you're familiar with Alan Walker's music, you'll probably already know that this sounds like a lot of his work, which is basically this overblown, formulaic electro house production that relies on these huge faders, synths, and the thumping kick and hi-hat combo that's perfect for any up-and-coming Minecraft YouTuber's intro music. None of this is that shocking or different from Walker's usual work, until you realize that the entire song is basically a remix / sample of the famous Karl Orff's movement O Fortuna. You know, that song. To the point where the intro literally just takes the original piece's intro by verbatim, only for the chorus of the song to take the melody of O Fortuna and apply it to his EDM slop formula that just sounds so embarrassing. How could he possibly think that anyone wanted to hear such a huge and epic classical piece be transformed into some trashy rave festival filler? It also doesn't work when we get the featured artist Ava Max singing along to the original choir melody in her usual cadence that doesn't bring any of the power or the flair of the original. I don't even hate Miss Max like some people do, but she was not the person to handle this. And that's before we get to the lyrics, which seems to focus on, well, fate and questioning whether everything we do is either from our own will or is already predetermined. Now, I get why this is the focus. Oh Fortuna can translate to Oh Fate and does share similar themes, but the thing about this song is that it really doesn't go any deeper into exploring this theme. It basically just says that there must be something pulling on her strings, like she's a puppet or ragdoll, and that she'll never quite know what the reason behind this is. But what makes her think about this? Is it about their struggles of life, love, the actual goddess Fortuna like in the original? Personally, I think it's about nothing. It doesn't feel like Walker made this because he wanted to explore the deeper meaning of the original work. It sounded like he knew that people recognized the choir and the melody and could use it as a backdrop to his usual shtick. And I think that's just downright depressing. Whether we can control fate or not, at least we can control the right to ignore garbage like this.